The old rancher had stopped counting the years the day the hoofprints vanished. Not because he didn't care, but because caring hurt too much. On the edge of a forgotten valley, where the mountains rose like stone sentinels and the wind never stopped whispering old stories, Elias Granger stood alone beside a broken fence. His hands, gnarled and trembling with age, rested on the top rail as his eyes traced the distant hills. Every evening at sunset, he stood there. Every single one. Waiting for a horse that everyone else believed was long gone. Gone forever, they had told him. But Elias never believed that. Not fully. Because some bonds don't break just because time passes. And some horses don't disappear without a reason. The night she vanished had started like any other. Quiet. Predictable. Safe. Elias remembered brushing her coat under the amber glow of the barn light, humming a tune his late wife used to sing. The horse, wild once, fierce, untouchable, had stood still for him in a way she never had for anyone else. Her name was Willow, and she had been more than a horse. She had been his anchor after grief hollowed him out. Then came the storm. Thunder cracked the sky like it was splitting open. Wind screamed through the valley, tearing at doors and fences. Elias had rushed out with a lantern, shouting her name into the darkness. He found the gate ripped from its hinges. Hoofprints leading straight into the hills. And then, nothing. Search parties came. Neighbors helped. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. Eventually, they stopped looking. Life demanded it. But Elias never did. Years passed. His hair went white. His steps slowed. The ranch shrank around him as land was sold off piece by piece just to keep the house standing. Some mornings, he wondered if he was waiting for Willow, or for the part of himself that had disappeared with her. Then, one evening, something changed. It began with the dogs. They started barking just before dusk, low, uncertain, not the frantic kind that meant danger, but the kind that made the hair on Elias's arms rise. He stepped onto the porch, heart thudding harder than it had in years, and listened. There it was. A sound so faint he almost missed it. A single, unmistakable hoofstep. Elias froze. His breath caught as the sound came again. Slow. Careful. As if whoever, or whatever, was approaching didn't want to be seen too soon. He whispered a name he hadn't said out loud in years. Willow. The wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of sage, dust, and horse. His legs moved before his mind could catch up. Lantern in hand, Elias stepped off the porch and into the deepening twilight. The path toward the old pasture felt longer than ever, each step heavy with fear. Fear of disappointment. Fear of hope. And then he saw her. At the far edge of the field, standing just inside the fence line, was a silhouette he knew better than his own reflection. Tall. Proud. Head lowered slightly, ears turning toward him. The lantern light flickered, and illuminated her coat. Grayer now. Scarred. Thinner. But unmistakably her. Willow had come home. Elias's knees nearly gave out. Tears blurred his vision as he took a step forward, and stopped. Something was wrong. Willow wasn't alone. Behind her, partially hidden in the tall grass, was another shape. Smaller. Unsteady. Moving closer to her flank like it belonged there. Elias's breath shook as realization crept in. A foal. The valley went silent except for the pounding of his heart. The horse everyone believed was lost forever hadn't just survived. She had lived a whole life without him. Willow lifted her head and looked straight at Elias, but instead of walking toward him, she stepped back. Her body angled protectively, placing herself between him and the foal. Her muscles tensed. Her eyes darkened with warning. The years hadn't erased her wildness. Not completely. Elias swallowed hard and lowered the lantern, setting it gently on the ground. He knew this posture. He remembered it from the first months after he'd taken her in, when she'd been more storm than animal, more fear than flesh. It's all right, he whispered, forcing calm into his voice. I'm not going to hurt you. The foal shifted nervously, pressing closer to Willow's side. Elias noticed how Willow adjusted instantly, how her stance softened just enough to reassure the young one without dropping her guard. That's when it hit him. Whatever had happened during those missing years had changed her. She hadn't just survived. She had become a mother. And she had brought her secret home. Elias took a slow step back, giving them space. His chest ached with questions he couldn't yet ask. Where had she been? Why had she left? And why, after all these years, had she chosen to return now? The lantern flickered again, casting long shadows across the grass. Willow snorted softly, nostrils flaring as she tested the air. Her gaze never left Elias, but there was something else there now. Not fear. Recognition. The foal peeked out from behind her leg, wide-eyed and trembling. Elias felt something crack open inside him, something he thought had died with the years. Hope. Whatever secret Willow carried, whatever story lived in the scars along her ribs and the wary fire in her eyes, Elias knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous and far more beautiful. And if you've ever believed an animal could remember love across years of silence, then stay with this story, because what happened next changed the old rancher's life forever. Elias didn't sleep that night. How could he? Not with Willow standing in the far pasture like a living ghost from his past, and a foal tucked so close against her side that the two looked like one shadow instead of two bodies. He watched from the porch, lantern turned low, afraid that too much light, or too much movement, might send them bolting back into the mountains. Every instinct told him to rush forward, to reach out, to touch her neck the way he had thousands of times before. But experience whispered something stronger. This wasn't the Willow he had lost. This was a Willow shaped by survival. The foal shifted often, wobbling on legs still unsure of themselves. Each time, Willow adjusted. Subtle, precise, protective. Elias felt the sting of something sharp and unexpected, guilt. Not because she'd left, but because she had learned to live without him. Just before dawn, the foal finally lay down in the grass, exhausted. Willow didn't rest. She stood guard, ears rotating, eyes never still. That was when Elias made his decision. If she had returned on her terms, then he would meet her on hers. At first light, he saddled nothing. No rope. No halter. He carried only a bucket of water, a small sack of oats, and memories heavy enough to bend his back. He moved slowly, deliberately, stopping every few steps so Willow could read his body language. She did. Her head lifted. Her stance widened. The foal scrambled to its feet, bumping into her chest. Elias stopped and lowered himself onto the grass, knees creaking in protest. He sat there, breathing, letting the morning wind carry his scent toward them. He didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice cracked. "You came back," he said softly. "I never stopped believing you would." Willow flicked an ear toward him. That alone felt like a miracle. Minutes passed. Then more. Elias poured water into a shallow pan and set it down between them, far enough that Willow wouldn't feel cornered, close enough that the offer was clear. He rolled the oats into the grass, scattering them loosely instead of piling them like bait. He remembered what trust looked like. The foal was the first to move. It stepped forward, hesitant, legs stiff, then stopped and looked back at Willow. Elias held his breath. Willow hesitated, then followed, every muscle coiled and ready to flee. They drank. They ate. Elias didn't move. Something inside him loosened, just a fraction. As the sun rose higher, details emerged that had been hidden in shadow the night before. Scars crisscrossed Willow's shoulder. One long mark ran down her flank, poorly healed. Her menere was uneven, as if torn out or cut away. Elias felt anger rise in his chest, not at her, but at the world that had taken her from him. Later that day, a truck crunched up the dirt road. Elias turned sharply. It was Mara, the nearest neighbor for miles. She'd been checking on him ever since rumors started circulating that he was waiting for ghosts again. She stepped out of the truck and froze. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Elias, is that?" He nodded without looking at her. "She's back." Mara covered her mouth as Willow shifted, placing herself between the humans and the foal. "And she's not alone," Mara said quietly. "No," Elias replied. "She's not." Mara didn't step closer. She understood animals. Instead, she crouched beside Elias, keeping her movements slow. "You know what this means, don't you?" Elias nodded again. Whatever Willow had endured out there, it wasn't gentle. Over the next few days, a fragile routine formed. Willow and the foal stayed near the outer pasture, never entering the barn. Elias brought water and food, always leaving space, always retreating before they finished. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he just sat a day. Each day, Willow stood a little less tense. Each day, the foal wandered a little farther. But the nights were different. On the third night, Elias heard it. A distant howl. Then another. Willow reacted instantly, head snapping up, body angling, foal pushed behind her. Elias felt the cold rush of memory flood back. This was why she'd left. Predators. Storms. Threats he'd failed to protect her from that night years ago. And suddenly, he understood. Willow hadn't abandoned him. She had fled to survive. Mara returned the next morning with supplies and news. "There's been talk," she said quietly, "of wild horses pushed into the high ranges. Some caught. Some hurt. Some forced to run." Elias clenched his jaw. Willow's scars began to make sense. She kept going, Mara continued. Because she had to. And somewhere along the way, she became more than just a survivor. The foal trotted past them, stumbling, then correcting itself. Elias watched Willow's eyes follow every step. "She became a mother," he said. "And mothers don't come home unless they believe it's safe." That realization weighed on him heavily. If Willow had returned, it meant something out there had changed. Something dangerous. Something final. That night, a storm rolled in, hard and fast. Thunder shook the valley, rain slashing sideways. Elias stood in the doorway, heart racing, watching Willow pace. This time, instead of running, she turned toward the barn. She didn't enter. But she stood there, hesitating, the foal pressed tight against her side. Elias took one step forward. Then stopped. He didn't call. He didn't beg. He simply opened the barn door wider and waited. If you're feeling the tension right now, stay with this story, because what Willow did next was the moment everything changed. And if you believe stories like this matter, tap like or share it with someone who understands that animals remember more than we think. The barn stood open like a question no one dared to ask. Rain hammered the tin roof, turning the valley into a blur of gray and silver. Thunder rolled so close it rattled the windows, and for a moment, Elias feared the past was about to repeat itself, that the storm would steal Willow from him all over again. But this time was different. This time, she didn't run. Willow stood at the threshold, muscles taut, eyes darting between the dark interior of the barn and the wild, open night behind her. The foal trembled, rain slicking its small coat, legs wobbling under the weight of fear and exhaustion. Elias stayed perfectly still. He felt every instinct screaming at him to step forward, to guide her in, to promise safety. But he knew better now. Trust couldn't be pulled. It had to be offered, and accepted freely. A bolt of lightning split the sky. The foal flinched hard, letting out a thin, frightened whinny. That sound broke something open inside Willow. She lowered her head, nudged the foal forward with her nose, then took one cautious step into the barn. Elias's breath caught in his throat. Another step. Then another. When Willow crossed the threshold completely, the storm outside felt suddenly very far away. Elias turned slowly and closed the barn door partway, not trapping them, just quieting the chaos. The lantern cast a warm glow over familiar shapes, old stalls, hay bales stacked neatly, the place Willow had once known as home. She remembered. Elias could see it in the way her ears flicked, in how her breathing slowed. She circled once, twice, positioning herself between the foal and every shadow. The foal sank into the straw, finally able to rest. Elias leaned against the wall, overwhelmed. Hours passed like that. He didn't approach. He didn't sleep. He simply existed in the same space, letting the barn hold all three of them. At dawn, the storm passed. Sunlight crept through the slats, illuminating something Elias hadn't noticed before, a crude rope scar around Willow's neck, hidden beneath her menere. It wasn't from his ranch. He'd never used rope that rough. His chest tightened. Someone had tried to take her. Later that morning, Mara arrived, her expression grim when she saw Willow inside the barn. She chose you, she said softly. That doesn't happen by accident. Together, they worked quietly. Fresh water. Clean hay. A temporary partition so Willow could see everything without feeling cornered. But peace never lasts long in the valley. That afternoon, a truck Elias didn't recognize rolled up the dirt road. Two men stepped out. They didn't smile. Afternoon, one of them said, "We're looking for a horse." Elias felt the ground tilt beneath his feet. They described her without saying her name. Paint coat, old scar on the flank, wild but valuable. Claimed she'd been part of a roundup years back. Claimed she'd escaped. Claimed she belonged to them. Willow heard their voices. She stiffened instantly, nostrils flaring, body shifting to block the fall. The calm she'd found in the barn shattered like glass. Elias stepped forward. "She's not for sale," he said. The men exchanged looks. "We're not buying," one replied. "We're reclaiming." Mara moved to Elias's side. "You don't have proof," she said coolly. "And this horse is on private land." One of the men smirked. "Proof's coming. We'll be back." When they left, silence crashed down hard. Elias's hands shook. That night, Willow refused food. She paced. She watched the door. The foal sensed the tension and wouldn't settle. Elias sat on the stall floor, back against the wall, heart pounding. He spoke quietly, not to calm her, but to remind himself why this mattered. "I should have protected you," he whispered. "I failed you once. I won't do it again." Something changed then. Willow stopped pacing. She turned her head slowly and looked at him, not past him, not through him. At him. For the first time since she'd returned, she stepped toward him. Elias froze, barely daring to breathe. She stopped just out of reach, lowered her head, and sniffed his hands. His scent. His truth. The foal watched, wide-eyed. Elias didn't move. After a long moment, Willow exhaled, deep and slow, and turned back to the foal. But she didn't move away. She stayed close. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was trust beginning to form. The next morning, Elias made a decision that would put everything on the line. If those men came back, he wouldn't be ready alone. He reached out to the one place he'd avoided for years, the county livestock office. Paperwork. Records. A past he'd never wanted to reopen. Because protecting Willow now meant fighting for her future. And the secret she'd brought home, the foal that proved she'd lived, loved, and survived out there, was worth everything. If this story has you holding your breath, stay with it. What happens next tests the bond between human and horse in ways Elias never imagined. And if you believe animals deserve a voice, take a moment to like or subscribe. It helps stories like this reach the people who need them. The papers arrived 3 days later. Elias stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it, as if the weight of it might somehow change if he waited. Official seals. Stiff language. A timeline that didn't care about memory, or loyalty, or the quiet miracle standing in his barn. According to the records, Willow had never been legally his. She had been listed as unclaimed stock after a wildfire evacuation years ago, rounded up, transferred, then marked as missing during transport. No follow-up. No closure. On paper, she belonged to no one. Which meant anyone could claim her. Elias felt sick. Mara read over his shoulder, her jaw tightening. "They're going to come back," she said. "With documents this time." As if summoned by the thought, dust rose on the horizon that same afternoon. The truck returned. This time, there were 3 of them. And they brought a trailer. Willow sensed it before Elias saw it. She snorted sharply, body snapping into a defensive stance. The foal pressed against her chest, trembling. Elias stepped outside to meet them, heart pounding but posture steady. He didn't carry a weapon. He carried a folder. "I've contacted the county," he said before they could speak. "And the state livestock board." One of the men laughed. "Old man, you don't even own that land outright anymore." Elias met his gaze. "But I own the truth." Mara stood beside him, phone already raised, recording. "You tried to take her once," Elias continued. "Whatever you did out there, whatever scars you left, you won't do it again." The men's smiles vanished. That's when something unexpected happened. The foal stepped forward. It wobbled, legs still unsure, but it moved into full view, sunlight catching its coat. A sharp gasp cut through the air. One of the men swore under his breath. "That's impossible," he muttered. Elias felt his pulse spike. "You recognize it," Elias said slowly. "Don't you?" The man avoided his eyes. Mara sucked in a breath. "This isn't just any foal," she said. "It's proof. Proof that Willow had escaped while pregnant. Proof that she'd survived long enough to give birth in the wild. Proof that whatever system had failed her had no right to claim her now." The men argued quietly among themselves. Finally, one turned back. "This complicates things," he said flatly. "But we'll be back. This isn't over." They left again, but this time, without confidence. That night, Elias slept in the barn. He hadn't done that in years. The foal approached him first, curiosity outweighing fear. It sniffed his boot, then his hand. Elias laughed softly, the sound strange and wonderful in his own ears. Willow watched closely. Elias spoke low and steady, letting the foal decide the distance. When it finally leaned into his palm, something warm spread through his chest, something he thought had left with his youth. That was when he noticed it. A mark on the foal's shoulder. Small. Pale. A symbol burned faintly into the skin. Mara saw it too. "That's a brand," she whispered. "Illegal. Hidden." Elias felt his stomach drop. This wasn't just about ownership. It was about abuse. The next day, inspectors came. Then veterinarians. Photos were taken. Statements recorded. Willow stood tense but calm, as if she understood this moment mattered. When the vet finished examining her, he looked at Elias with quiet respect. "She's been through hell," he said. "But she protected that foal at all costs." Elias nodded, tears threatening. "She didn't just come back for shelter," Mara said softly. "She came back because she remembered who you were. Because she remembered safety." The ruling came faster than anyone expected. Temporary protection order. No removal. Investigation opened. Willow and her foal would stay. When Elias returned to the barn that evening, the sky was painted gold and crimson. Willow stood calmly as he approached, closer than ever before. He stopped, waiting. She closed the distance herself. Her nose brushed his shoulder. Elias closed his eyes, overcome. "I've got you," he whispered. "Both of you." And this time, Willow didn't pull away. If you feel the weight of this moment, stay with us, because the final chapter isn't about loss, or fear, or survival. It's about what happens when trust finally wins. And if stories like this move you, take a second to subscribe or share. It helps keep voices like Willow's heard. The valley felt different after that. Not quieter, just settled, like a long-held breath finally released. The mountains still watched. The wind still whispered. But something invisible had shifted, something deep and permanent. For the first time in years, Elias woke up without the ache of waiting. Morning light spilled across the ranch, painting the barn in gold. Elias moved slowly, as he always did now, but his steps carried purpose instead of habit. When he opened the barn door, Willow was already awake, standing over the foal with calm certainty. She lifted her head when she saw him, and didn't tense. That small thing felt enormous. Over the following weeks, the investigation unfolded. Officials came and went. The men from the truck never returned. Records were uncovered, lines traced back, proof stacked piece by piece like stones in a wall that could no longer be pushed over. The ruling came on a clear afternoon. Willow was officially classified as a survivor of unlawful capture. Her foal was protected under her. Elias Granger was named her legal caretaker. Elias read the words twice before they sank in. His hands shook, but this time it wasn't from age. It was from relief. Mara hugged him, laughing through tears. She found her way back for a reason, she said. Somewhere deep down, she knew. Life slowly grew into a new rhythm. Willow chose when to come close. Some days she stayed distant, watching from the pasture. Other days she followed Elias along the fence line, hooves matching his pace. The foal, whom Elias eventually named Ash, for the wildfire year Willow vanished, grew stronger and bolder by the day. Ash learned the land quickly. Learned the barn. Learned Elias. Trust bloomed not in grand gestures, but in quiet ones. In the way Willow allowed Elias to brush her neck again. In the way Ash slept in the sun while Elias mended a fence nearby. In the way Willow stood between Ash and the world, not out of fear anymore, but confidence. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Elias leaned on the fence and watched them run, mother and foal silhouetted against the sky. He thought of his wife. Of the years he'd spent alone. Of the part of his heart he'd buried with Willow's disappearance. Somehow, it had come back too. Neighbors began stopping by again. Not out of pity this time, but wonder. The story traveled farther than the valley, carried by shared videos and whispered retellings. People commented. People cared. Elias didn't understand all of it, but he understood this: Willow's story mattered. And so did Ash's. One night, long after the stars had come out, Elias sat in the barn with a mug of coffee, listening to the soft sounds of breathing and shifting straw. Willow stood nearby, relaxed, eyes half closed. She chose you, Mara had said. But Elias knew the truth. They had chosen each other. Willow had come back not because the past pulled her, but because the future finally felt safe enough to return to. She hadn't come home to be owned. She'd come home to belong. As the foal stirred and Willow gently nudged it closer, Elias felt something settle inside him at last. Peace. And if this story touched you, if you believe that animals remember kindness, and that trust can survive even the longest separation, take a moment to like, subscribe, or share. Stories like Willow's remind us that home isn't a place.